Hello and welcome back to That Average Joe podcast. Of course, I'm your host here, Joe, and today we are talking paternity court. I don't know if you watched it, but if you haven't watched it, please stop right now and go tune into just one episode, and then you better get a better grasp about what I have to say about it. I don't know, stumbled across this show. Well, we all watched Maury back in the day, but this is, a little bit more formal version of it. And I stumbled across it maybe almost a week ago now, and low-key kind of hooked. It is very intriguing because to me it just shows the horror stories like within our community, because I just don't understand how women can get on there. Like, ironically, the first episode that I came across was this woman. It was this she had two children, and there was a guy there, and he ended up not being the father of either of the children, and they were absolutely distraught. Then the male child ended up finding out that not only is he not the father, but she's not even his mother. And I was just like, okay, whoa, let's stop this show. And then, no, I'm hooked. Then I started finding other episodes, and then you just hear, oh, my son's incarcerated, so the mom's on the podium trying to find out if the child is theirs. You have one, where the people are deceased, the son is deceased, and they're trying to find out, does he have a legacy to continue? You find out, long lost kids of 20 years who don't know their father or, been raised by other people. And I'm just like, okay, whoa. This show, it's really, a telltale as to what is going on in our community and also what's going on with our women. How are we not responsible enough to be assured as to who our child's father is? Because in a recent episode I just watched, the woman had her husband there and, her side piece. And, after they tested, they were reading the results, it came out that it wasn't the, side piece, child, and she was all relief. And then, it was next to be the husband, and she was like, hold on, whoa, why are we even testing? It's like, well, we're just testing just to be sure, and, reassurance and everything. And, of course, what happened, the husband wasn't the father. And I was just like, and she broke out into tears, and, and I was like, but you knew. These women, they know, and I don't know why they would even get themselves to be on the show and, possibly face that, kind of embarrassment. Some, a handful of times, of course, where, she's right, he is the father, he doesn't need to step up to the plate. But it's just a handful of times where, these women have tricked these men, or maybe these men have, been were naive or something, because I just don't understand how, conception is a very small window of time. How many people or what was going on in this short window of time where it's so much doubt. And furthermore, this just creates, generations of lost children. Because kids are 1, 2, 5, 10, 20, 30 years old on this show who, are obviously hurt and distraught that they didn't grow up in a household where, they felt some kind of love. They, had that father figure. They had a responsible mother figure. These kids seemingly have grown up broken. When you watch them, you don't see too many high value people, in society, high producing people in society. You see people who are following the trends that were, that they became accustomed to. If their mom didn't know the father to their children, then the daughter runs into that same cycle. And to me, it's just a detriment to the kids. Because I watched the show and I thought this was purely a horror story. I was like, it's just one episode after another that's just a horror story. It's just, there's nothing really good that just seems to come, because the women, they're not going off to create happy households. They're, the husband's like, okay, I'm going to pay my child support, and, I'm going to try to, come around a little bit more often, or, this and that. But he's essentially moved on and created his own other life. And likewise, as the woman, she's moved on and she's on to, something else. And it's like, well, where does this leave this child? And it's like, well, where do people lack, the responsibility where, a 5-minute incident, dictates the rest of your life, and also sets a foundation that's unstable for the children. Because children have to come from these households, and what do they know? They know their father's over there and their mom's over here, and also to know that their mom was promiscuous. Because kids are going to grow up and see these things, and they're going to grow up. A lot of the kids have grown up with doubt, like, hey, I've been raised by this guy for the last 4 or 5, whatever odd years, and that's not my father. Now I have to get to know somebody else, or just kind of continue on being, it's just confusion. And as I watch the show, and I'm just like, okay, thank you for, bringing to light, and we're, able to get some answers, for the men and women on the show and for the children. But I just feel like a lot of these things are just so preventable, because where are the women to not, first of all, be accountable as to who your child's father is? Who are you actually sleeping with? Who are you letting into? Why are people going out just so raw dogging it on anybody? One guy's like, oh, we just met and we did that. And oh, I know you were doing this and such. And women being with people's cousins and their brothers or whatever the case. It's just madness. And the cycle continues, because the kids are going to watch this, and they're, because they obviously grew up in an unstable household, and you can't blame the kids for, following in those footsteps, or their life follows in, some aspect of this. And I'm just watching it, just thought this was just such, like, what I called a horror story. Horror story after horror story. Each episode is American Horror Story. 1, 2, 3. It's like, constant. And I'm not knocking the show like, oh, it's awful and everything, just the stories and everything. It's heartbreaking. Honestly, I found myself crying, found myself, curious to, like, what happens now. Some of the, when you hear that the fathers were shot and killed, or the fathers were incarcerated, some of them even falsely incarcerated. This guy spent how many odd years in prison only to come back out and do the DNA test, and he wasn't even the father. And these women sometimes know that there's doubt and everything, or making them sign birth certificates or going to the court. It's just, a lot of this is so preventable, and it's preventable on both the men and the female. Men, you should be accountable for who you are making, who are you giving your seed to, and making the mother, because, the mother to your children, because this is the legacy you're creating. This is the person you're choosing to create your legacy with. And if you don't see yourself being with them, you don't see yourself creating, then wrap it up, keep it, be smart about it, because it's not fair to you and fair to these women, because you now turn them into single mothers 1, 2, and 3, because a lot of them on there, they're not just mothers of 1, they're mothers of 2 and 3, and even some of them are married and have, paternity disputes, or we're separated. I was with Jerome for the weekend. It's honestly, like I said, a horror story. And again, this is detrimental to the kids. This is detrimental, generationally. This, again, the fathers, you need to be more accountable with who you're making your mother, who you're giving your seed to. And women, this show wouldn't be in existence if it weren't for you. If you weren't irresponsible at it, who you lie down with. And also, too, how many people could you be lying down with in a certain amount of time? Again, conception, it's like, it's a finite amount of time. And for these women to go on there and it's 1, 2, and, and it's like, oh, I thought it was, and oh, the nose. And they be on there with all the more certainty, you guys. Oh, no, I know, you don't see the nose and the this and the that, or his eyes and all of that. Oh, they go on there very certain, and then when they read the results, they, want to cry and break down. And then even when the judge asks, like, oh, do you know, or did you have doubt? Oh, now I know. And it's like, well, why did you go through all this? Why didn't you just bring him here so that we could figure this all out? If you knew that the doubt lied within 3 or 4 different gentlemen, then bring them all here. Instead of having 2 guys sit up there. And sometimes these guys genuinely want to be fathers. And then you see the heartbreak when they find out that a child that they've been raising is not theirs, or a child that they really want to be theirs isn't theirs. You can sometimes really see the genuine heartbreak. They want to step up, and this woman has misled them. And, it's no coming back. And you see the hurt that sometimes these guys have, and when they go into future relationships, they still are messed up because of that mistrust in women, and they hold up their guards. And this is why we walk around with so many broken men, because women sometimes cause these things. And then women, I don't understand sometimes how you cause yourself to be, in a predicament where you are a single mother, where you have doubts, or where you are alone, or where you are struggling, where you're having to go and chase some guy after child support. You hear guys on there 20,000, 30,000, 5,000, 10,000. That's a lot of money. And both lives are ruined. The child's life is ruined. The mother's out here, struggling. The father, his license gets suspended. His paychecks are getting taken, cut in half. It's a lose-lose situation for everybody in totality. And I just wish that, something that's so preventable, people, really took account for, because this is not just today, okay, now he's the father or he's not the father, and it's years to come. These kids suffer. We're in a society where when we have these, single household kids, or people who grew up in, dysfunctional households, whether they were with both parents and still grew up in dysfunctional households, it's detrimental to the growth of our society, especially, in particular, the blacks, us black folk out here. This doesn't help us grow, because, we need to be cultivating households that we can grow children who are loving and accepting, and grew up in an environment where they felt love. They felt love from both environments, and not that somebody came in on, the Monday or Tuesday when they had you, or every other weekend, or that other holiday, or where they weren't able to spend time, or where mommy and daddy weren't happy. All those aspects and everything. It really does play a role, not in just the growth of the child, but in how that child affects society. We get affected, because we women have to now deal with these broken men, and now have to grow them and baby them and get them to feel themselves, and they don't want to seek therapy. It's literally a snowball effect that needs to be addressed. So if you haven't now, please take a second and go watch Paternity Court, and just see what I've just seen in the last week of watching it, and how saddening it really is that, so many kids and so many families are, distraught from this. But again, I mostly blame you women, because why are you on this show with all these doubts about who the father of your child is? You should be very well known that, my child's father is Jerome, and I know there's no shadow of a doubt. And if it's not, you don't sit there looking, stuck, stupid, and slow. But thank you for tuning in to another episode of That Average Joe podcast. Please stay tuned for more. There's gonna be more to come. Thank you, and bye.